Reintroduce yourself again to Shifa atau Shafi.
I'm Vincent.
Vincent. I lupa tadi hati. Satu Vincent, Shifa kena panggil Shafi lah. Engine lama kan.
Elok lah ni 3 different races ngadap je.
I need BJ now next week. The token Indian. We have one token Indian in our office. Dulu ada Kavi juga.
Oh ya. Sarah tak ada dah.
Yeah, I got it. So actually want to ask about your degree life, and then after your Victoria institution, then
Oh no, I didn't go to Victoria Institution, man. Puan Noriati Tarim. I didn't go to Victoria Institution lah. I went to LaSalle.
Oh LaSalle.
LaSalle in
Oh this one nak you VI sorry. Silap.
itu dia tinggi sangat ke LaSalle lagi better lah.
Those days yes, tapi now tak ada lah. During my time, yes, LaSalle is the best.
I was in LaSalle Klang, LaSalle PJ throughout. LaSalle kindergarten even. So I had the LaSalle.
Sorry, wrong info. Ya Allah jauh.
So, but it's the same thing like it's still the missionary run type of. So you get exposed to the part where you see these dedicated teachers lah, you know, really, because all of them would have come there for really to more disciplined education. Of course, they don't preach so much the religion, but you do see in each of this, especially in Klang, they actually had one parish there, one church.
Yeah, me too. I'm from convent.
Did they have a church?
Yeah. I have a church. And every morning before they enter the class, they
And
do
then,
some prayers.
And then in LaSalle Klang, they even had like a grotto. And then they put, you can see where they put the plants and all that. So you see at a young age all these influences that I had. So I went to LaSalle. Then because my dad was a district officer in Klang, so we had a lot of, I would say, the part where Malaysians are very, because my father would then have to deal with many segments of walks of life. So I remember the house that we stayed in, I think there's always like people around. So I think that sort of thing gave me a lot of exposure and not being, I had a lot of Chinese friends when I was.
Government quarters dulu, most haunted, big quarters.
Yeah, this one is usually on almost 15 acres.
Yeah,
House was on top of the hill. Big rain tree.
Especially when the DO, no.
Yeah?
Always on top of the hill, big.
And they had a tennis court.
Yes.
They had a tennis court, clay court. I say if I would play tennis, then I would then be as good as
tennis player.
Those days was nice, but now the government.
So the environment actually growing up sometimes, you know, you'll find something that will either influence you a little bit. I did appreciate space.
A lot. The environment really influenced us a lot.
Yeah. Because before that I was in Cameron Highlands, but that was like when I was born.
He is made in Cameron. You are made in Cameron Highlands, right?
made in Cameron Highlands.
Yeah.
Born in Penang.
Made in Cameron Highlands.
Oh, okay.
Born in Penang.
Is that too much information?
Too detailed. It's okay.
So because my dad was, the one thing I always remember about Cameron Highlands is, unfortunately, before, because when you go up Cameron Highlands, the road winds through and all that, maybe an hour to 2 hours. But before you reach Cameron Highlands, there'll be a part where you cross this lake. There'll be that bridge, and it always gives me such, wow, I'm going to be there. And as I grow older, people say it's like, you hear people say it's like Switzerland and all that sort of thing. And yeah, maybe, and the subconscious part of your growing up does affect me. So I do like things of nature, beauty, serenity, and all that. And then when I went to Klang, of course, it was a different thing. But the LaSalle education system was because those days in the 60s, 70s, 80s, they were probably if you didn't have a chance to go to boarding schools, these are the schools that you want to go to. And the quality of education was still very much desired for. So people would say because it is. So as far as design, I think, I don't know, maybe it was because since I was young, I could actually, even when I was in kindergarten, I could draw 3D somewhat.
Is it?
My 3D version. Not 3D, wow. But I could actually have the thing that it has got, how do you translate that into 2D? That means it's got a depth, it's not a flat thing. You know how you see all those kids who draw, mine would have a bit more of detail into it already. So I don't know where I picked it up subconsciously and all that. So, and then of course I was drawing. Then because I had that thing, what I did was I went down one day to my cousin's place, and she had this book on art, how some basic thing. And that's where I really learned about the vanishing points without realizing it.
In
perspective.
Primary school? Or?
No, primary school. When about.
Wow.
So then I could actually start, but didn't construct it very technically, because once 2 point with 1 point and all that. All I knew that things had. So I had that already. So it was something that differentiated. And then after that, as you develop, I think because of your so-called influences, you do sometimes bring a lot. And what I realized culturally, the Malaysian or Asian or Malay culture, we got so much details and depth and all that, which is good. So my composition, if I had to do now some of the things, I feel that they were very busy. I had you just want to put 1,001 ideas on something, just over and over. And that's a cultural thing, everyone in Asia would have that. So then with that, you go on and learn about the formal way of art, appreciation, proportions, whatever it is. And you realize that that's when you start to become more selective. You have to be more discerning. Then it goes against philosophy, what movement and all that. So one of the things the American education affords me is to go back into the Western civilization history. And then, so then I could see that one of the projects that I did was supposed to be a hut by somewhere on top of the hill. But maybe because my dad was the district officer in Cameron Highlands and Klang. So that so-called simple hut didn't look like a simple hut. It was a bit like a mansion, because then I realized that it was because the things that you think what it is. So, okay, there was a drawing thing, but later on I learned through my education, in the end, what was pivotal to me was I had a lot of richness. I could do things like Art Deco and all that, because it lends quite easily. No, this is in already college. College, in university. Like when you're taking my first project, first I did was, I remember clearly, that project was a museum in arid, sort of desert region. I did play with stones as cladding and all that sort of thing, completely like a stone building. I didn't realize that. But then after that, then I did another, but my design was still very rich. It had a lot of that. So when I went to final year, I think because of that, as I studied architecture, I liked Albert Aalto's work because it was organic, and very subtle ways, sort of blends in with the. In fact, I'll show you what I did for my final year, and I still have that board, some source which was presented. So that one has until today, and I've gone very much into the philosophy of this harmony, the balance of things. I'm not necessarily into the starkness of Tada Ando and all that, but I do appreciate his simplicity. And I also have the part of me that will be, I'm seduced by the works of Zaha Hadid because of his,
you like the shape.
Suddenly your walls of blood. It's all about seamlessness and all that. So if I have to, will be now my tool will be. I still have Albert Aalto as my, because he will. Or at least the Scandinavian architects are a bit more sensitive. I find their work
very detailed.
Sensitive without being too loud. And if you want that's strong and fluid and movement and the dynamism is works like Zaha Hadid. In the 80s, her work was too theoretical. So now what we're going to do is all the thinking that we have probably started, that people are already concerned about how you use the resources and all that. So now at least we see this balance happening in terms of all the green building ratings, and that's important. So your philosophy sometimes, something that guides you. Hopefully you can feel it, you can understand it, but it doesn't have to be always too clever. It's something very basic.
Yes.
Simple things about how we use our resources, how we appreciate our environment. And I find that the more socialist developed countries, like of course Australia, Scandinavia, certain parts of the Western world, they're very sensitive to the environment. So how they develop it is more responsible. And the architecture then also, it becomes almost part of it. But for us, we have to make that conscious,
improvement.
Or because even if you were to believe it, the other people sometimes it's all developers. I want to make more money. So when you come into the real world, there are battles that you decide it's worthwhile fighting for. There are things that you just don't build your bread and butter or run of the mill every time you do your own house or something. Yes, you can improve when you look at things, because the biggest thing about the Terrace of Lane house model is that you find that all of us go back. What do we do? First thing, there'll be at least 3 cars. All rooms will be aircon. And every one of us going, turn it to 16 degrees. And it's because our envelope of the building, although we've done this model to death, but developers are still not willing to put in a wall insulated, maybe put better performance on the roof, so that in the end when you come back, you don't have to go into an on, because we all just take it, come back cold. I have spoken to Chiazin, so he said his daughter also comes back, put it at 16, all because they want to put a blanket. So really the human comfort is actually between about 24 to 27, something like that. So, there's a lot of cultural things and values. So these are what I mean by simple things. So then, now you are more conscious about the plastic bag thing. Yeah, it seems, what plastic can help, but we all are coming through an evolution of learn and unlearn. Maybe now we should be a bit more conscious about bringing in, because the one thing I see that people here don't have yet, and I think it's maturity in society, is the collective responsibility. You go anywhere after big things, oh my God, you go and see your Pasar Malam, whether it's Taman Tun, whether it's Cheras. After the end of it is
A lot of
the whole street
rubbish.
is strewn with rubbish.
Yeah.
And that's just a one-night event. And you see how people have not appreciated our environment. We take it for granted. We have so much water, water is cheap. Electricity is cheap. But these are depleting resources. A lot of us don't realize that. And a lot of us, will find ways to say that, I paid my council already, they should be cleaning this, all sorts of things. But in the end, you don't realize that if you have to equate it to some dollar and cents, a lot of people say what benefit I get. The benefit you get is actually you don't really have to maintain the environment so much because there's still a collective response. It will still cost you a bit more. Maybe that, So if you argue with people who says that, there's no real direct benefit, yeah, true. But in the end, it's a cost. There's a cost to it. The way that people behavior and all that. So architecture also I'm realizing that we are to a certain extent have the opportunity to become a little bit like a social scientist in a sense. Because you can influence people to be a bit more not so much of forcing them, but
Awareness.
at least awareness, so that, say, if you go to a hotel right now, you know for sure that if you go to a hotel, you can't be wearing your rags and all that in the lobby. So hopefully, if the hotel, whatever environment, it doesn't have to be all 5 stars. Like our urban design is always that we suffer. We walk the sidewalks, people just don't care, and even the way we design so much clutter, so maybe organized clutter is good, but but it's not even clutter, it's filth, it's all sorts of, all the quality and living standards. So that's why when you go to countries that are so developed, you just have a nice feeling when you walk out of the streets, everything has been taken care of, but there's somebody out there, be it the architects, who designs things like these are the urban design things. So when you guys are designing this, I find that I've been going through a few crits. It's so funny that all of us, when we are given a site, for example, this is a site, but somehow or other, when the designer's intervention will come here, we'll draw everything and then but the ground floor plane or the datum plane, I always tell this, even my office, put in the context. You got to put it, there's a sidewalk here and all that. You can put in the existing context and you can actually now, your design, how does it relate at the street level? When we talk about street level relations, all these things. So you say, okay, actually now the sidewalk's like this. What we're going to do, we're going to improve the sidewalk, we're going to have a ramp here, the grass curb here, this is going to be the light pole here, this is going to be the signage there, and then there'll be trees here in front to create that shaded. So there, a lot of us have maybe subconsciously not taken it as, because in the end, sometimes as much as architecture is all wonderful building and all that, but suddenly you see you're always putting it into context, and some of the context is not going to be that great anyways, but at least the way projects are being run, you can actually affect and redo certain portions of it. So you should be thinking in that way. So the message I'm having here, you must not see things always as much as a building can become iconic and all that. But you must see that relationship level is still going to happen. It doesn't mean that you are so much better or whatever, but because you as an architect have the opportunity, you can tell, okay, like you go to the authorities and say, okay, I think we need to improve. And the authorities will have their rationale why they want maybe a taxi stand, bus stand, or they want. It's all about people in the end. Because if you go there, even if I don't see like the building I designed, it's more the connection whether the plaza is connected, the sidewalks. Even if I don't look up, I feel that if you can address a bit of the comfort, wayfinding, when people use it. Because some people they don't care whether to a certain extent so the area in the end, everything is designed for different types of group. Of course, when in the office, then they look at it as the floor plate. This is where architecture comes in the building. But at where your interfacing is also equally important. It is the approach to your building, and then later on, when you talk about the design and all that, it shows your maturity. You will develop when you visit places, when you see, it all affects people in different ways. So sometimes on public transport, the bus stand is dropped on the other side, but then there's no real crossing. Or no, then you see, oh no, or even the sidewalk. We all know the problem is we cannot solve everything, but if you have an opportunity to design and put it into context, you can still sort of remodify this, the urban, So I'm not sure how Taylor's university is having their education. In the US, the education system is actually based on the Bauhaus tradition. US has been known about presentation. So they will go and they focus that way, which is good and bad. The way that the industry has been developed is that you're not necessarily equipped with all the technical details per se, but you know where to get them. So you got this Construction Specifications Institute where you can just, windows and all that, because it's a developed nation in that sense of it. But whereas I think certain countries, they go into, really, your screws underneath and all that sort of thing. So in the end, you need both. And sometimes in architecture, it's wide enough for you to be in either or depending on the architectural flow. But you realize you're thinking architects for macro, micro, and you got to almost your camera, your pen, macro, and then you got to see the big picture. And then suddenly you micro, you got to see the detail. And that's the most challenging part. And you almost have to do it like by a press of button. And you're like your camera, okay, now you're seeing detail, now you're seeing macro. So at macro, you'll have the so-called other levels. So you were saying we stopped from the Victoria Institution until now. It's such a long answer.
So it's Laksa.
LaSalle.
It's Laksa Secondary School.
I was actually LaSalle throughout, from kindergarten. I was in the LaSalle institution basically, from kindergarten, primary to secondary school. So
until your
although they were in two different cities. Then my college, I went to the greenery, but another way of appreciating the landscape. It's a place that if you have to like it, it sort of grows on you, because it's unlike sand dune of the Arabian deserts. These are what they call it, the big cactus, saguaros and all that. So which means you appreciate even the diversity in the so-called arid zones, desert climate types. So that was essentially why was I sent there? Sometimes I go into all these things and all that. So
Your parents sent you there?
Huh?
Your parents sent you?
No, I was under the government scholarship program. So that one was a 5-year degree program.
5-year degree.
Yes. And they have a professional and a pre-professional phase. American education, they will have about 170 or 170 credit units, credit hours, and out of which you do first year between, I think 30, you do 1/3 of about 12, maybe 12 credits will be But over there, what they do is you do social sciences. First year, you do the study of social sciences, and then after that, 4 years, then you go purely architecture. After you go, that's what we call pre-professional phase, and then you have 1 or 3 or 4 courses architecture. That then based together with your other social sciences will be how they determine whether you get into the professional phase. And then we started off with about 5 studios, each studio about 10 to 12. And then first year 60 students, and then you sort of see it falling down. The people, think architecture is not for me. So then you understand it's not cut out for everybody. So I think in the end, when we graduated from maybe about 20% or
20%.
Yeah.
Fair.
So about 10 some people probably said no, architecture is not for me. So I don't know whether over here, I think it's a bit more. The difference is, of course, each year you've got your freshman, sophomore, junior, and your senior years and all that. Most of the courses in the professional phase, you need to get the lower courses first before you can. So if you had failed one, you can still sort of, unless you can't fail, I think you can't fail a design or something, then you have to really wait 1 year. So there's a few of the core things you can't fail, but certain things you can go back and take it the next year. So if normal people will take 5 years sometimes. There'll be some people that will take 5.5 years or 6 years because of yet to repeat. But I think that's pretty much the same. The difference, I'm not too sure, but over here you have 2 semesters. No,
3 years.
3 years and each
6
year.
semesters.
Still 2 semesters per year.
Yeah.
I see. And so your equivalent will be part 1.
Yeah, we got the power already.
So the only problem your tailors is that I'm not sure when they're going to get their part 2.
The part 2 is after your degree, then you need to exam the part 2 or?
The equivalent education is part 1. Because the MAPSM, this accreditation body, is quite rigorous in a sense. There's always a time. So some of the schools, I think PAM right now is trying to address that. We're trying to, because we need a fair bit of architects. In our country of about 28 million, our ratio is actually we don't have enough architects.
Oh.
So just to give if you go by, of course, developed nations, UK, UK, Australia, US, 1 to every 2 to 3,000 people, there's one architect. In Malaysia right now, there's only one architect for every 15, 16,000 people. The data is about 1 or 2 years old. So we don't have enough. The association, the fraternity, and we're trying to do something about it. But at the same time, we have to manage all this process and all that. So the only thing for those, just keep aware of what are the options that you need to do. If you do continue with tailors until the end, or if you can try and get your part done at a school that's recognized, be it locally or internationally. The problem with local schools, I think, if you're not in the part 1, then the allocation of space is quite limited. Like CUM, I think they only allow about 5 to 10 students from outside competing. So you're better off maybe looking at options in all the Commonwealth countries, UK, Australia, which is always on the list of Lembaga. So that's what I would recommend to people who has this situation. Whereas American graduates, either way, they're not recognized part 1, part 2, but they did develop a mechanism. They call it submission of the part 1, part 2.
Okay.
And that one you have to keep your coursework, the handouts and all that, including so irrespective, you just keep it. Because some people who went to the US did not do that. I remember there was an architect that came to do like somewhat of one-day career advice, and she said, that was before I went to the US, one of the programs, you better keep your coursework. Because if you don't have that, then it's very hard for them to graduate. Then you got to sit in for the part 4. And part 4 is like the part where they ask you to do quite almost as though you're working how many years, a full design, not just an architecture, M&E.
Fantastic. So in US got part?
In the US, the system is that you do your education bachelor 5 years. They don't have
Master.
part 1, part 2 and all that sort of thing. But they will have, in each of their 51 states, they have their board exam, and they got many papers. But one thing about US, they developed such a way that it's actually a very rigorous, you have 9 parts, I can't remember, and each part they will be quite specific. They're testing your design, testing the structure. So for whichever parts that you have not gotten through, or then you only come back to take that part. That's a good thing. The not so good thing is that if you are going to practice in Arizona, you do it in Arizona. But if you're going to California, you go to California State exam.
Oh.
So it goes by each state will have their board exam. So you can't really cross-state practice as well. So that's the US, you see. So in light of all this World Trade Organization and equal access and all that, that's what they're trying to do now with all the services industry, open up the youth in all these Western countries, but not realizing that in their own country they also have this. But it's like saying that that's acceptable, what we have here to be protected. So there's all these issues and to consider now. So we are in the stage of always constantly evolving. Because I'm in the council, that's what I can see. Now we are trying to address firstly foreign architects. The reality of it, the foreign architects will be hired by our own clients. So how do you then mitigate and somewhat give some sense of control to this? It's still not easy because there's always that preference or mindset that the foreign architects are always better.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, sometimes the local architect also supports that certain instances with, whether in the process, whether they are deep enough, whether they are doing academics or reasons for this, because our market has been quite protected for some time, and so are many other ASEAN, maybe very apart from Singapore, because they are very much open to. So we are now heading towards that. So, in fact, I think within ASEAN, we supposedly can set up in Indonesia, we can set up in Thailand, cross-border, certain activity and all that. But it's still, in the end, there'll be ways. So I reckon what's going to happen that we will still make sure that anybody, though they don't have to be Malaysian, but you all must sit for the professional examination. But the professional examination right now is a matter of doing 2 papers. But eventually, maybe they will do a few other options. Maybe do a really high level of interviews. Maybe because maybe say Norman Foster wants to get his part 3 here. Are they going to allow that?
To come.
Right now, the World Trade Organization are asking that all this somewhat free market. So that's the challenge. So for you all, now you all know it's very global. Everything's accessed by internet. Because that would then be a way of society recognizing you under the laws that you are now a professional architect. But it's not necessarily the only answer. You can also decide that you want to become a design architect. Because you have seen models of people using architectural education and have succeeded in life. Some become developers, but they've got the basis of architectural education. And I was sharing that day with Shifa Matira that the person who created the 4 Seasons, the benchmarking of hospitality industry, is Isidore Sharp, and he studied architecture. He didn't practice architecture, but he studied architecture. So because it's such a wide education, so you got to decide at the beginning whether you want to become more project architect type later on, but you must have intrinsic value. So after that, the first few years, you will always be working under project architect. You start out with the toilet details, but a lot of times Malaysia is a country maybe doing a housing project. So you're thrown into the deep end, sometimes it depends on the structure. Some you just design, do presentation, look at precedent studies. It's all about the sense of space. And architects, I believe, I can also see that when you started off, you start off with the spaces where it's rectangular or double volume and all that. But the next stage then, as you develop it, then you know what you bring on. Like what influences you bring on, maybe from the professor that you met in school. I think your style is pretty much maybe look at this approach. You should be still in the process of hopefully narrowing down to your likes and dislikes, what type of philosophy that you are. And I've always kept my Alto as guiding, because I like how he is treated in the environment. This is the organic part of it that was very, so he was considered one of the masters, but in a different, more, not like Walter Gropius or Nathan Duro. Corbu has a lot of social things in it, but the architecture that they produce, international style is just read the Bauhaus and how it came into then we got the Mozart Romanesque, so it became the international style. And we are now in the third or fourth version of the international style. We are now in the green building, where the green building we will take a page from every school of architecture. It is in the good principles of design. So it's now it becomes a science. So you start off your career with that, and then I said, and for me being an American graduate, that was an extra hurdle. I need to pass my part 1 and part 2, which is to prove to the board of architects, the stakeholders that regulates the quality of education here, that the education I receive in the United States is equivalent to what you benchmark in Asia. This is always the British system, so those traits. So when you work
after your US study, right? When you come back to take the part 1 and part 2.
No, I work first, but I have to be. You cannot do that because
with the context.
Either ways, you're still either an assistant architect, whatever they call it, graduate architect at that time. But you still cannot go on and set up your own practice and all that.
Yes.
So that even if you come from a school that's recognized, you still need 2 years to fill in the logbook. They say the part 3 logbook, which you have to be demonstrating that all the different aspects of the practice, from the site design, design development, all that. You fill in logbook, what your role was, you went to the site, chaired the meeting, all that sort of thing. And it needs to be 2 years.
So
for me,
2 years?
Took me 5 years to get. First I got to get my part 1, part 2 because I cannot even consider to sit for exam because they're not recognized as an unrecognized degree. So accept that. So luckily I just came back in 1990.
1990.
Yep. Started working. 1990 Malaysia was going through a boom. Suddenly you're thrown into, junior architects or fresh graduates got to go and do things that in other countries you won't be assigned for it. This and you got to run some of the projects already. So that's the good and bad of it. So you got to learn, you got to find out what you need to do when you're holding your chair, your first site meeting, how do you open tender, and you meet the clients. At that time it's still drawing by hand, how you present it, perspective artists who then draw it, and then how it's being sold, you see all the process and all that. So I hung on into that. The first firm, Kumpulan Architect, 1990. I worked there 10 years. And there was a project that I did from the first meeting that the client had. Now, it's not Tan Sri Danny Tan or Tabit Danny Tan, I'm not sure. He owns Tropicana at that time when it was still a virgin jungle, the highway was not completed. That project, the clubhouse, started from the drawing that we did 2 nights before, so we're spending drawing until I did the final accounts. So I stayed on there, it was 4 years. It was a complete project. I saw the in and outs of how to do a project. And that's very important. If you're lucky, go ahead. Because some people move because of better pay or better working environment, don't ever get to see that. So the project normally averages about 3 to 4 years, the simplest. High rise more, 5, 6 years. Meaning that not so much from the time you do your design, see in ups and downs, rework and all that stuff. So then I had to sit my part 1, part 2.
Okay.
Somebody was pushing me, come on, I was going to sit for it, what are you waiting for, and all that. Because after that only, then I can count my 2 years experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're working first, then after that, what part 2? then working 2 years.
And then you do all this in hindsight, I said like earlier, blah blah blah. So yeah, it depends. Now you are somewhat halfway there in the sense that your TLS is part 1 is registered. So if you go the path, like say for example, you can go to any good school, US, maybe Japan or some other places or France, but not recognized. But you will have to make that decision that you're going to come back. If you are coming back, make sure that you don't sit. Even then,